again, everybody. I'm Jan, the Jazz and Blues audiophile, and once again, we're back again together for another episode where we're gonna look into some of the recordings, the recorded output of the famous Benny Goodman and his orchestra, his quintet, his quartet, his trio, the legendary clarinetist at his best. We're now going to look in the years 1944 and 45 specifically. I just want to let everybody know that during this ongoing series, for this part anyway of the early recordings, I'm talking about the 1930s and 1940s recordings of Benny, I'm using pretty much the whole collection that I have of the famous CDs called the CD series called the Complete Chronological. I'm going to have some hard time with that word. The Complete Chronological Classics. So the chronological classics are pretty much everything that an artist, a jazz artist, has recorded in chronological order, of course, from his earliest recordings up until his latest recordings. For they don't really go into the latter part of an artist's career. I think that most of the time they go right up until the early 50s for most of the recordings that they have issued out in this famous collection that originates from France, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. This is an immense contribution to the documentation of a lot of early jazz musicians' discographies and complete recorded outputs. So they usually go right up until from the earliest recordings in the 20s all the way down to the late 40s, early 50s, but they don't go any further than that in their documentation of an artist's recorded works. But this is what I'm basing myself off. So I'm on the volume right now. We're going to be listening extracts from the volume covering the years 1944, 1945. Now what we're hearing again in the background here is Benny's orchestra playing After You've Gone. Now, during this period, again, we're in 1944 when this was recorded. These couple of big band numbers. Now, on this particular album covering the years 1944, 1945, there are only 4 tracks out of 23 that are big band numbers by Benny. And these big band numbers, along with some of the small trio, quartet and quintet recordings, were done for V-disc recordings because we were still, for part of 1944, under the famous recording ban, and so it was impossible for Benny to record for his official recording label, which was Columbia, and he had to resort to V-disc recordings. That's the only way that artists during that period, 43, 44, during the record ban, could do some recordings, the ones that were sent overseas to the soldiers to boost the morale. So this big band here that we're hearing in the background and that just performed After You've Gone, which as I said in the last episode, this must be one of the most recorded numbers that Benny ever did. I don't know how many versions of After You've Gone with a big band, with a trio, with a quartet, with a quintet, with a sextet he recorded. It's amazing the number of times he recorded this particular piece. But anyway, this was a band that was assembled, to record. Most of them were regular players with him. Some of them were not. Here's what this big band was named. This was called, this orchestra that we're hearing on the first 4 tracks was called Benny Goodman and his V-Disc All-Star Band, with, among others, Perry Como. That's who we're hearing, I believe, in the background right now singing. Kiss me, dear, just walk away. So he was featuring Perry Como on some numbers, Mildred Bailey, on some numbers. So the band comprised this famous V-Disc All-Star Band. That was Benny Goodman, of course, on clarinet. Roy Eldridge was on trumpet. Charlie Shavers, Yank Lawson, also on trumpet. Dale Mickey McMickle, also on trumpet. Vernon Brown, Ward Silloway on trombone. Reggie Merrill, Erman Jaime Schertzer on alto sax. Arthur Art Rollini, Wolf Tane on tenor sax. Ernesto Ernie Caceres on baritone sax. Teddy Wilson was at the piano. Tommy Kay on guitar. Gene Traxler on bass. And Gordon Specs Powell was at the drums. And again, the guest vocalists for these V-discs were Perry Como, we're hearing in the background, and Mildred Bailey. So the 4 numbers that were included on this CD, on this particular chronological classic CD covering 1945, the only 4 big band numbers with this all-star band are After You've Gone, Goodbye Sue playing in the background. There'll be a Jubilee with Mildred Bailey singing, and These Foolish Things Remind Me of You, also Mildred Bailey singing. And that's Perry Como ending that tune. And now there'll be a Jubilee with Mildred Bailey.
Don't you be weary, don't you be dreary, 'cause that trumpet's gonna sound. Just keep your eyes peeled and keep your lips sealed, 'cause when that good news gets around, there'll be a jubilee, there'll be a jubilee, there'll be a jubilee upon that happy day. Sister, your man and my man too, your man and my man too.
Now, by September, October of that year of 1944, finally the recording ban will be over, and Benny will start recording back again with his regular recording label, which is Columbia Records at the time. But the interesting thing here is that for a large part of 1944-45, a lot of the recordings he's doing are with his small groups, and there's a good reason for that, with his quintet, quartet, trio. Because at the time, and here's what we read here in the official introduction to this volume of the Chronological Classics, we read this: Benny, after several months of limited activity, Benny Goodman was again very busy in late 1944. The Seven Lively Arts, a new musical review written by Cole Porter, with ballet music by Igor Stravinsky and produced by Billy Rose, premiered on November 24, 1944 in Philadelphia. It officially opened at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York on December 7, and was then performed no less than 183 times until March of 1945. Benny Goodman and his quintet played a vital role in this production as they provided some of the music for this musical. So that got him pretty busy, especially with a small group, in a small group format. So therefore, a lot of recordings were done during that period in a small group. Even for the V-discs that he edited, that he sent out, that they put out that year, he did record also with some of his small group formations. So for instance, on this next number we're going to hear, which is called Hallelujah, well-known number from the period, we're going to hear him playing with his V-disc, what was identified as Benny Goodman and his V-disc quartet, which comprises Benny Goodman, of course, on clarinet, Teddy Wilson on piano, Gene Traxler on bass, and Specs Powell on drums. And here they are performing the famous tune, Hallelujah. These guys could cook. I don't know. These guys, they sound pretty darn good. They sound like they're very close to the original, trio and quartet with Krupa and Teddy Wilson and Lionel Hampton. It's amazing. Just terrific small group stuff. Yeah, they're just cooking. I mean, Benny. In a small group, even in what is big band, whatever formation that Benny used to play with, I mean, he was cooking. He could cook up a storm. He could really get down. I mean, even though the man looked very serious, very some would say stiff, when you look at him in his pictures and all that, he was a guy that could really swing out on the clarinet when he wanted to, and he did it very naturally. It was not hard for him to just swing on that clarinet, and also he had some great musicians that could swing just as much as he could. He always surrounded himself with this excellent personnel, whether in small group setting or large format with the big band. And in any case, we're going to hear now by September of 1944, the recording ban was finally over. Benny was back with Columbia, and now he could record with his Benny Goodman Quintet. And this is what he's going to do. In September 25 of 1944, he's going to record these two numbers. Phenomenal. Again, some fantastic performances here, small group performances. Benny Goodman here is at the clarinet, Teddy Wilson on piano, Sid Weiss on bass, Maury Feld is on drums, and Red Norvo is on vibraphone, for these two recordings of the quintet. And they're two very famous numbers called Sweet Georgia Brown and Chic of Harrowby. Here's Sweet Georgia Brown. So again, 19 of these 23 tracks on this particular chronological classic CD are small group recordings by the quintet, the quartet, the trio. The wonderful, wonderful stuff. And it showed the way that Benny was starting to lead too. He was starting to lean towards performing preferably in small group settings with small bands, quintet, quartet, sextet, septet, octet sometimes. He was going to go that way, of course, because it's less expensive. It's easier to travel when you're just a few musicians together. Everything's less costly. And it's easier to get into small clubs with a small group of musicians, as if you have a big band with 14, 15, 16 musicians, you need more space. And he was going to do a lot of that touring. He was going to not abandon, of course, the big band setting. He never completely abandoned it. During his whole career, he's going to come back to the big band. He's going to tour with a big band in Europe. He's going to take a big band on several trips to Europe, even to Russia in 1962. It would be a famous date for him. But right now, you know, in the mid-40s, the big band era is coming to a close. The small groups are starting to take over. You know, the bebop jazz revolution has begun, and bebop is usually performed by a quintet, a quartet, small groups. And Benny is going to start going around with a lot of small groups, performing in small group formats, and all over the place, all over across the United States, Canada. He's going to keep on touring, keep on recording actively, and there's going to be an awful lot of small group recording starting 45, 46, 47, and the following years. Interjected with big band periods, small big band touring periods for some specific reasons usually. He's going to be used by the State Department, sent on overseas tours. He's going to be at the Brussels World Fair in 1958, I think it is. We're going to see him go with a big band overseas several times, and sometimes of his own personal, accord, he's going to decide to go and tour with a big band. But mostly, he's going to be starting to tour with a small group all over the world, and that's going to lead to some absolutely excellent recordings, phenomenal displays of showmanship and professionalism, and just excellence in playing altogether, because Benny is a master clarinetist. He's one of the master clarinetists of the 20th century. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So this CD allows us to listen and hear a lot of these recordings, a lot of these small groups that he was heading in 1944-45. It's mostly, as I said, most of the CD, 19 tracks out of the 23, are small groups. And here's, for instance, here's Rose Room. Here's Rose Room, a very well-known number. Here's another version of After You've Gone, this time recorded by the quintet. Here it is, once again. Now here's a number that was to become a classic small group performance for Benny, and it was the famous track called Slip Disc, of course, that alluded to the fact that Benny suffered a slip disc in his back and had to be operated upon way back in 1941. So he titled this particular small group number Slip Disc, and this is a very famous number that he performed often when he was in a live performance setting. this number, we're hearing the Benny Goodman Sextet, and this was recorded February 4, 1945. We've got Benny Goodman on clarinet, Teddy Wilson at the piano, Mike Bryan is on guitar, Slam Stewart on bass, Maury Feld on drums, and Red Norvo on vibraphone, and sometimes Jane Harvey on vocals. Great Red Norvo at the vibes. And just a great swinging all-around number. There goes Benny. I think you can sense the joy in this, in these overall performances. There's a lot of joy exuding from these musicians, from Benny himself, and from the musicians. Even though there's just instrumental numbers, you can feel that joy coming through. It's they're having fun. These guys are having fun playing together. They're making some great music. They're making some classic small group recordings that will go down in history. And it's just a joy to listen to these recordings. If you don't own these small group recordings, I mean, first of all, the classic ones from 1935 to 1938-39 with Benny, Krupa, Hampton, and Wilson, you need to get those. And then these ones from the latter part of the 40s, they're just, as far as I'm concerned, they're just as good. It's just incredibly swinging and some absolutely wonderful soloing, some wonderful jazz performance, all in all, very much comparable to the early stuff he was doing in the 30s. So you got to familiarize yourselves with these tracks. If you not familiar with these, if you only know Benny Goodman as a big band guy, well, you got to realize that he, in a small group setting, he was also establishing himself very, very strongly as a very, very prominent clarinetist and an excellent all-around jazz man. We're going to hear another little extract from the Sextet, once again playing a famous, very famous tune called Body and Soul. Now this is also a track that was to be recorded many, many, many times over by Benny Goodman in all kinds of different settings. So here he's recording it with the same sextet I mentioned before. Again, this is from February 4, 1945. And as a last number before we leave and we close off this little episode, concentrating on the year 1944-45 and the career and the recorded output of the late, great Benny Goodman. Before I leave you with the last number, which is going to be again Body and Soul, but in a trio setting this time, featuring of course Goodman, Teddy Wilson back at the piano, and Maury Feld on drums. Now you compare this version, this trio version of Body and Soul, with the original trio version of Body and Soul, which I think is from 1936 with Krupa, Wilson, and Goodman. This is pretty much the same trio. This is Wilson, Goodman, and Feld on drums instead of Krupa. But you can compare these different trio recordings. It's an interesting thing to do, and try and decide which one is the best, which one's the best version in your opinion. Anyway, before I leave, don't forget to comment, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section if you want, down below in YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe and share this video with whoever you think it might interest. This is an ongoing survey of the recorded output during the whole career spanning many years, almost 50 years, from the late 1920s all the way down to 1986, of the legendary jazz big band leader and clarinetist Benny Goodman. So until next time, and here he is in the trio, as I said, the trio setting, playing again Body and Soul. Till next time, I leave you with my famous last words: jazz on, people, jazz on, and listen to some great jazz. One of the great experiences in life, to listen to this wonderful music and share it with other people, which is what I'm trying to do with this little program, or these little episodes on YouTube. Try and share my love of jazz and try and spread the word around. There is some great music that a lot of people are missing out on. So do your part. Do your part of sharing. Share this video if you want with some people that you think it might interest or might help initiate them to this great music that's playing in the background. Till then, jazz on. We'll see you next episode, where we're going to be looking again, still in the year 1945, and hopping in slowly to 1946 for the general recorded output of the great Benny Goodman. Till then, bye-bye.